All right, so we're gonna have to talk about what is combustion. We got to talk about this because it's related to metabolism. Like, there's even definitions online that says this is metabolism is a controlled combustion, or it's how we get our caloric measurements. Is that we're able to associate metabolism with combustion. So we're gonna just what is combustion? Hopefully, this will help us understand metabolism better. This is a typical equation, or this is at least an equation I found online from Florida State University at Jacksonville, that this is combustion. Fortunately, there's a few things wrong with this model, and we're going to kind of address it. The first thing we're going to address and is going to be this. Not all combustion needs hydrocarbon. Not all combustion needs hydrocarbon. If you have hydrogen and oxygen, you can make combustion. We do that in rocket fuels. You can also do this with phosphorus and oxygen. It doesn't have to be a hydrocarbon source. So that's one thing that's wrong with this model of combustion. So, I can even keep this in. We can watch this together.
But I just wanted to show that, well, everything that we've seen reacting so far has all had oxygen in it. So all the burning reactions we've had have had oxygen. Do things have to have oxygen in order to burn? Can we burn things without using any oxygen? Well, we can. Now, Chris has filled up this apparatus here with another gas, chlorine. Now, chlorine is very poisonous, so we've had to take precautions here to absorb any chlorine that's coming out through the apparatus here. But I wanted to show a reaction now with no oxygen whatsoever. Now, in this balloon is another gas. It's a hydrocarbon called acetylene. And this burns. I should be able to set fire to this. Okay, it burns. Very smoky flame here. Okay, but I need to start this by putting it into the Bunsen flame to get it to burn. So this is acetylene or ethine. So it's 2 carbon atoms and 2 hydrogen atoms in each molecule of this gas. Now, I'm going to put this into the chlorine. So there's no oxygen at all in this. I'm going to turn the tap any second and watch what happens. There we are. As soon as the gases mix, as soon as the acetylene comes into contact with the chlorine, we instantly get a reaction. It's burning, so there is no oxygen in this reaction. This reaction is just chlorine and acetylene. If we have the lights up, please. So you can see all the carbon that's forming here because the reaction isn't really complete. So it's a very smoky reaction, but nonetheless, this is a reaction involving no oxygen at all. Okay, if we wheel this one away, please, and we'll swap it. So that was a hydrocarbon spontaneously burning in chlorine. Okay, no oxygen at all. We have another flask here. We're going to see if hydrogen can burn in chlorine. Okay, now, the hydrogen needs, this time it doesn't burn all by itself, it needs something to start it, so we're going to use some acetylene, some of the ethine, to start the reaction. So this balloon has the acetylene in, yes? Yes, please, yep. And this balloon has the hydrogen. So I'm going to put the hydrogen balloon into the chlorine. Chris is going to put the ethine or acetylene in. Okay, and well, I just need the nozzles to meet. That's good. So in a minute, I'm going to open mine, and Chris is going to open his. So if you open yours, then Chris. Oops. Try again. Okay, and yours off. There we are. So mine is now burning. Just leave yours there. That's fine. But there is no carbon being formed. It's only from the acetylene there. The hydrogen is burning by itself. We have that one out. Thank you. Okay, good. So the hydrogen burnt in the chlorine, so no oxygen there at all. And the reaction that we saw is hydrogen combining with chlorine. No bang, it was just burning very nicely.
Okay, and there's your equations. 2 carbons, 2 hydrogens, 4 chlorine, and then a hydrochlorine. Yeah, so you don't actually, if we go back to our original equation for what is combustion, you don't need a hydrocarbon. and you don't need oxygen. You don't always need heat because this one just spontaneously combusted. So we don't always have to add heat. And as you can see, we don't always get these as well. We don't always get CO2. We don't always get water. But we always do get fire. And that's just, oops, that's just one thing I didn't add down here. Boom. So it is consistent across all these combustions is fire. And then we get that fire response. How long a combustion is depends on how long a fire lasts. As long as the combustion is happening, the fire maintains. And so that's one of the definitions of a combustion. From Lavoisier, I was so captivated by the preface of Lavoisier's Elements of Chemistry that I made a whole copy edit. You could get this for free if you want. I'm not necessarily making a lot of money off the hard books. I think I make like $10 off of each of these, but it's a small way to support if you want to have a copy yourself. It's on Amazon. I think I make a little bit less off the hard covers, but I like the hard covers, so I kept them cheap. If you want it for free, it's on independent.academia.edu. Should have a link in the description. If not, there's definitely a link on my main page. And this is the book, by the way, this is the book where the calorie was first defined, like in science history, was by Lavoisier from the thought experiments of Pierre-Simon de Laplace. They worked together about 6 years before this, 7 years before this, 6, 7. Let's see, I got a bunch of dog ears. I don't have an index in here either. On the next copy, I should definitely add an index. That'll be good. This is why having a digital copy, go online, get the digital copy, because when you want to research this stuff, control find, and then type in the words that you're trying to look for. It's so much easier. Here we go, I found it. Part 3, Chapter 8, Section 1. Oh, I was right there. Man, I just didn't read the first paragraph enough. It was literally the first paragraph. Combustion, according to what has been already said in the first part of this work, is the decomposition of oxygen gas produced by a combustible body. The oxygen which forms the base of this gas is absorbed by and enters into combination with the burning body, while the caloric and light are set free. Every combustion, therefore, necessarily supposes oxygenation, where on the contrary, every oxygenation does not necessarily imply concomitant. Welcome back to English pronunciation. Concomitant combustion, because combustion, properly so called, cannot take place without disengagement of caloric and light. Before combustion could take place, it is necessary that the base of oxygen gas should have greater affinity to the combustible body than it has to caloric. And this elective attraction, to use Bergman's expression, can only take place at a certain degree of temperature, which is different for each combustible substance. Hence the necessity of giving a first motion or beginning to every combustion by the approach of a heated body. The necessity of heating any body we mean to burn depends upon certain conditions, which we have not hitherto been attended to by any natural philosopher, for which reason I shall enlarge a little upon the subject in this place. You know what? I might just read this whole chapter. Nature is at present in a state of equilibrium, which cannot have been attained until all spontaneous combustions or oxygenations possible in the ordinary degrees of temperature had taken place. Hence, no new combinations or oxygenations can happen without destroying this equilibrium and raising the combustible substances to a superior degree or temperature. To illustrate this abstract view of the matter by example, let us suppose the usual temperature of the earth a little changed, and that it is raised only to the degree of boiling water. It is evident that in this case phosphorus, which is combustible in a considerably lower degree of temperature, would no longer exist in nature in its pure and simple state, but would always be procured in its acid or oxygenated state, and its radical would become one of the substances unknown to chemistry. By gradually increasing the temperature of earth, the same circumstances would successively happen to all the bodies capable of combustion, and at last every possible combustion having taken place, there would no longer exist any combustible body whatever, as every substance susceptible of that operation would be oxygenated and consequently incombustible. There cannot therefore exist, so far as as relates to us, any combustible body, except such as are incombustible in the extraordinary temperatures of the earth. Or what is the same thing, in other words, it is essential to the nature of every combustible body not to possess the property of combustion unless heated or raised to the degree of temperature at which combustion naturally takes place. When this degree is once produced, combustion commences, and the caloric which is disengaged by the decomposition of oxygen gas keeps up the temperature necessary for continuing combustion. When this is not the case, that is, when the disengaged caloric is insufficient for keeping up the necessary temperature, the combustion ceases. This circumstance is expressed in common language by saying that the body burns ill or with difficulty. Although combustion possesses some circumstances in common with distillation, especially with the compound kind of operation, they differ in a very material point. In distillation, there's a separation of one part of the elements of the substance from each other, and a combination of these in a new order, occasioned by the affinities which take place in the increased temperature produced during distillation. This likewise happens in combustion, but with this further circumstance, that a new element, not originally in the body, is brought into action. Oxygen is added into the substance submitted to the operation, and caloric is disengaged. The necessity of employing oxygen in the state of gas in all experiments with combustion, and the rigorous determination of the quantities employed, render this kind of operations peculiarly troublesome. Almost all the products of combustion are disengaged in the state of gas, and it is more difficult to retain them than even those furnished during compound distillation. Hence, this precaution was entirely neglected by the ancient chemists, and this set of experiments exclusively belong to modern chemistry. Having thus pointed out in a general way the objects to be had in view in experiments upon combustion, I proceed in the following sections of this chapter to describe the different instruments I have used with this view. The following arrangement is formed not upon the nature of the combustible bodies, but upon that of the instruments necessary for combustion. That's that chapter. Anyways, so the combustion commences and it's a chain reaction. And that's also this post by Substack also says the same thing is kind of essential. Like that's why rusting isn't necessarily combustion. And things, just to make the point that things that are oxygenated aren't always combustion. And that's going to be important as we continue into this discussion about, is metabolism a type of controlled combustion? And we're going to get into that right now. Okay, welcome back. Same day. I'm going to take a shower after this next one though. So this is cell metabolism, just kind of like a quick overview. Hopefully this is visible. Hang on, I turn on more light. Hopefully that helps highlight a little bit of the floor lamp. So this is how your food, your carbohydrates, your fats, and your protein get converted into the first chemical needed for like the metabolism that your body's going to use it for. And that's going to be this acetyl group right here in the middle, or this one as I've outlined. So your carbohydrates are going to turn into pyruvate in your body, which you can see is this big long chemical equation. And then this pyruvate is going to be turned into an acetyl group, and that acetyl group is going to be combined with coenzyme A. And then it's going to be introduced into the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria. So when this pyruvate is converted into acetyl coenzyme A, it also creates CO2. But this is not a combustion mechanism. I hope you understand. There's not combustion, there's just a chemical reaction. Pyruvate into acetyl and makes CO2. No combustion, just so that we're clear. Fat doesn't turn into pyruvate. It just kind of goes through this complicated process where it becomes acetyl. Basically, the acetyl group, as you can see, is 2 carbons with an oxygen attached. And this fat gets the oxygen. It's a good question where it gets that oxygen from. From water. This is essential biochemistry, but it doesn't use oxygen. fat into acetyl doesn't use the oxygen we breathe in order to become the acetyl group that we need in order to start the Krebs cycle. And so then I just want to outline, like, these are the different chemistries outlines, the similarities between them. Protein has this nitrogen group. Carbs have a bunch of oxygens attached, has an oxygen attached to each carbon. Fats do not. This just has this one oxygen on the front with a carbon with an oxygen, and the rest are carbon chains with just hydrogens. Pyruvate is a 3-chain carbon with some oxygens attached, and acetyl is a 2-chain carbon with an oxygen attached. And that's attached to the sulfur coenzyme A, and that's introduced into the Krebs cycle. They just call it sulfur coenzyme A because it has the S in front of the coenzyme A, and so I'm trying to be proper from what I think. And then once it becomes acetyl, we get into the mitochondria. And so up here, the carbs, fats, and proteins turn into either pyruvate or acetyl. And then if they turn to pyruvate, then they turn into acetyl. And we'll go over anaerobic respiration in a second. But remember, this is the aerobic. So this is where the oxygen is being placed. This is the quote-unquote delayed combustion. This is the first half of it. There's still another half that we're going to get into in a second. So this is the Krebs cycle, also known as the tricarboxylate cycle. I think I said that right. And the citric acid cycle. Tricarbolic acid cycle, Krebs cycle, TCA cycle, citric acid cycle, same cycle from biology, same. So the acetyl group comes in, and then on the green, I have labeled each of the different 8 steps that are in the process. And the purple is the chemical that comes in, that is created after those processes. And one of these things that are added is like water is added in here, but oxygen is not. Oxygen, if you can't see that sign, oxygen is not involved in this cycle at all. So when we're making the carbon dioxide that is going to be pushed out into the blood and what we breathe, it's not with the oxygen that we breathe. So the carbon dioxide we breathe out has never comes in contact with the oxygen we breathe in. And so there's no chain reaction from that other definition of combustion. If we take that chain reaction one, then there is no chain reaction. But this is not an immediate reaction, which is why some people try to call it a delayed combustion. But this really just isn't a delayed combustion. We're gonna get into how this is kind of like a battery, because where are we going to use that oxygen? We're going to use it on the electron transport chain, and where we're going to use that is electron transport chain. So it has 2 layers, this inside layer and this outside layer. This inside layer is the top, the outside layer is the bottom. This is called the matrix, and this is called like the inner membrane, essentially. And so we have 5 different things happening here. These are 5 different complexes of like little motors, little tiny biochemical gears. And so the NAD that we got from the Krebs cycle, the NADH, is going to be oxidized and is going to donate the hydrogen into the inner membrane, creating a positive charge. These charges are going to be important for later. The electron goes through the membrane of this layer, goes through each complex until we get to the end. The second layer also adds some electrons and adds some hydrogens into this mix. Those hydrogens are then added on into the further mix. And then as we come down here, the electrons bind into this iron right here. It binds into iron. And then that iron also decomposes the oxygen and gives it the electron. And so the oxygen comes in and is decomposed by iron, not by copper, but by iron. And then it takes in these hydrogens from this channel. And so what we have here is a positively charged inner membrane and a relatively negatively charged outer membrane. And so this oxygen is a receiver for the positively charged hydrogen and the electrons coming through that are driving the force. What's driving this energy right here is like a battery. It's not like combustion, it's like a battery. It's electromagnetic changes. It's electrostatic potential. It's electromagnetic potential. So that's just another reason why we should stop calling it combustion. Like if we're trying to be scientists, if we're trying to say like, this is what's right. And there's a lot of people who's getting mad about AI slop for getting just tiny little things wrong. And so we shouldn't get this wrong. We should be just as diligent in our regular everyday science. And so this is important. This is important to get right. It's not a combustion. It's not a combustion. And we're going to look at this. How we're going to look at this, we're also going to look at fermentation. Fermentation is next, but I'm going to go take a shower. And then we're going to study some fermentation. Well, just to reiterate, the oxygen we breathe doesn't come in contact with the food we eat. The food we eat is used in this Krebs cycle, which just does not use oxygen. And it creates this NAD and this QH and the FADH, which I don't have written here, but it also creates other stuff that comes in. And then that FAD, the NAD, and the FAD, and the QH, you can't see it, but it's the QH, the epoquinone, ubiquinone and ubiquinol, because it's ubiquitous chemical, denoted by Q. So we donate the hydrogens. We donate the hydrogens from the food, not the carbon, the hydrogens, to create an electrical gradient, a positively charged inner membrane that's going to create the energy that's necessary in the spinal complex. I guess I got to write that down because it's like the whole thing. ADP, ATP. This entire electrical gradient is all there to help create this ATP. If this ATP is uncoupled, if there is an enzyme on here that uncouples this, that uncouples that, then ATP is not formed. And instead, the hydrogen comes out, and can you guess what we get? We get heat. We get heat. Like a battery generates heat, we generate heat. Not like combustion, we generate heat. It's like a battery generates heat. Just because two things generate heat doesn't mean it's combustion. Battery generates heat. We generate heat because of an electromagnetic gradient, not because of a chain reaction explosion. Okay. On to fermentation. Here we're back, and I'm clean now. Fermentation. So fermentation is when bacteria or yeast, because yeast are just, eukaryotic cells as well. So they have like mitochondria and everything. At least they did a quick Google search. That's what they said. I'm not a yeast expert. But fermentation is an anaerobic process that doesn't use oxygen. It uses glucose or carbohydrates. In glycolysis, it makes pyruvate. And if this pyruvate had oxygen, it would be used in aerobic metabolism in the mitochondria, which is why you got to cut off oxygen from the yeast in order to ferment alcohol. And when that happens, when you have no oxygen, the pyruvate goes through alcohol fermentation, and that becomes ethanol. And this noticeably in biological text is not a form of combustion, while aerobic metabolism is. And so the problem with that is humans have anaerobic metabolisms as well. And so there's two major anaerobic systems we use to restore ATP. First one is this phosphocreatine system. So this is the phosphate and this is the creatine. And it basically is just a one equation transfer, just like a quick pop, pop, and it transfers right in there. The reason people take creatine supplements is because your body can store creatine. The reason your body wants to store creatine is because of this metabolic reason. It can only last about 20 seconds through exercise, so this is known as like the power metabolism because it restores ATP the fastest. And so when you have a lot of phosphocreatine stores, hypothetically, you should be able to do a lot of explosive work. And this is restored in the mitochondria, by the way. So this will have to go back to the mitochondria to get this phosphate back onto it, because the phosphocreatine is a much more stable molecule than the ATP. The ATP will kind of fall down into ADP after about 6 to 8 hours. That's actually the cause of rigor mortis, and that's a known clinical forensics, anatomy, physiology topic. You could tell a dead body because of rigor mortis because that's like when the ATP is degraded. I don't know if it uses all the phosphocreatine in the muscle too. I'm sure it would, but I don't know. Anaerobic glycolysis, when there's no O2, I might use all these stores actually. I'll put on an edit right here of what it actually uses. But anaerobic glycolysis, which is using no oxygen, so it's glucose, and that creates ATP. Just glucose, just to pyruvate by itself, creates ATP, just so you're aware. So this whole process creates ATP. It also creates CO2, but no oxygen is used from our breath. Just the glucose itself creates it with the enzymes, of course. And the pyruvate, when it doesn't have oxygen, then it goes, the it converts into lactic acid, and that becomes the lactate. Or it's mostly lactate, which is the lactic acid without the hydrogen ion. And this lactate can be used, it's produced mostly by type 2 fibers, but type 1 fibers can reuse it and convert it back to pyruvate. In the liver, it can be converted back into glucose. So your body can reuse this lactate. And from studies that are referenced here in Biochemistry of Sport and Exercise Metabolism, I recommend this book. It's really good. But that's anaerobic metabolism. And so I'm just very confused about, we have this this, by the way, this is known as lactic acid fermentation. This is the type of fermentation in our bodies, part of our metabolism, that's supposed to, and fermentation is non-combustion. So we have a non-caloric, non-combustion way of using energy and a combustion way of using energy. It doesn't make sense. Let's go ahead and do some Venn diagram. All right, so we have our 4 constituents. We got combustion, aerobic metabolism, anaerobic metabolism, fermentation. And so what we know is that fermentation and combustion are not the same thing. So we'll go ahead and put a barrier. Fermentation and combustion are not the same thing. Fermentation and anaerobic metabolism are the same thing, or at least in this category of metabolism, they are. According to this, combustion and aerobic metabolism are also supposed to be the same thing. But human metabolism is both of these things. That's human metabolism. But these are mutually exclusive. Like they are not the same thing. But these are both metabolism. So is metabolism a delayed form of combustion, or is it not? Or are we trying to argue like just this aerobic this is the only delayed? That seems ridiculous. I'm not a big fan of that. And especially because even in this, if we're trying to do this, hold up. Okay. And this metabolism is not a chain reaction driving force. It's not like this cascading effect. It's like a bunch of different chemical equations, different chemical steps that happen again and again and again. And any one of these steps can be disrupted, and that could be a medical problem. Combustion is just combustion. It's a one-step process where things come in contact with each other. Oh yeah, and that too, contact. So if we want to talk about which one of these are all aligned, metabolism, oh, here I should be more specific, contact of carbon plus oxygen. And so which of these are actually part of metabolism? This is not part of metabolism. This one and this one, this is not part of metabolism. But these are both part of combustion. This is part of combustion, and this is part of combustion by the definitions. So we're getting something clearly not right here. And I think it's just because combustion, or this idea of like the calorie being infused and the body producing heat, is such an old topic. It comes back from all of our models, like these Allwater models, are from before modern physics, before we understood the electron and everything. Because calories, and this idea that combustion is in the body, is just not true. It's not a combustion process. So again, combustion is this fast, immediate, creates fire, is very high energy, a lot of energy is released. It's more energy than your body could take. The lowest carbon combustion is 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body starts to denature at around 106 degrees. So if you had all these combustions going on inside of you, it wouldn't make sense. It's not a delayed combustion. That's just chemistry. That's just chemistry with extra steps. You're not trying to say all chemistry is just a different form of combustion. It doesn't make sense. A battery is not a form of combustion. Combustion is defining something very specific. Like we saw in the video, it's about fire, it's about flame. Respiration, it's not even about oxygen anymore. Like we know that it's not about oxygen. Respiration is slow, it's delayed. You could store that energy as fat. That's like, it's not coming up, and you're not converting the food you're eating into ATP. You're using the food you're eating to create energy gradients that restore ATP, that physically help bring ATP together. It's more like a battery. It's not fire. It's not like boom and everything goes. Even when your muscle uses ATP, which by the way, when it uses ATP, it doesn't use oxygen. They use ATP. and then it waits. It doesn't smack into the muscle, like, because there's this protein that's blocking the muscle from spontaneous contraction. It's called tropomyosin. And the muscle head, after it breaks down ATP, is in a cocked position, waits for calcium to control to come in, and then that thing comes up and then grabs on it after that's moved. So the ATP is already combusted, but then it waits for action. That's not how a combustion works. Combustion goes bam. Combustion pushes the energy through. So it's not a combustion. The energy is stored in the electrons and in the molecule. It just changes the electromagnetism of the molecule by changing the elements and by changing the structure and the rearrangement. That's the energy of respiration, molecular arrangement, not combustion. Combustion, and all the idea that respiration is combustion, is from before modern physics. When we understand modern physics, then we can understand what respiration is actually about. Respiration is about the exchange of electrons, the exchange of molecules, and the changing of electromagnetic environments at microscopic, nanoscopic scales. I hope this makes sense. Respiration is not a combustion. So this is one part of like why you don't burn calories. You shouldn't use calories. Just count macros, because the energy is in the atoms. So you just got to count macros, because each macro is going to do a different thing to your body too. And like we're going to get into that more of that in like biochemistry. But you are a big chemical factory, essentially. You are chemistry, and it's beautiful to learn about. You can learn about it in books like this, and you can learn about it in books like this, Introduction to Biochemistry. And it's a fantastic thing to learn, like about the chemistry of your body. Just know that the simplified model of combustion, or like burning calories or burning fuel or burning energy, is not the correct way. And follow and like for more, because we're going to get into it on some more series. I guess I'll kind of see how the comments go, and we'll see what we tackle next, if we'll go more on calories, on like why calories are wrong, or what we should be doing instead. Because we're kind of already doing what we're supposed to be doing. Like for nutrition, count the macros, and how you measure it is based on body weight. There are some charts available. There's also charts available in my book. Again, free book resource. I think it starts in chapter 3. It's like the first page of chapter 3. You can get the book for free online. So, or you can, I think I get $5 off that book if you buy a hard copy, which looks like this. Very small. Let's see. Front page of chapter 3. These are your macros. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Be sure to, hit all the buttons. And if you like this kind of stuff, let me know. Send a comment. Just anything helps, like the algorithm, I think. So just help get the word out. This is important. This will help people get a better understanding of their health. So yeah, thanks.